Things from Hopalong Hollow. This is Jerry, and the rabbits and I are pretty hungry right now. We've worked up quite an appetite. What you saw transpire in the last 5 minutes actually took several weeks to accomplish. So we're going to whip up a really quick granola here, a Hopalong Hollow Granola. Everybody has their own granola recipe, and nothing in the world is easier to make than granola. But this is our recipe, so just follow along and it'll be done before you know it. So we're going to use 4 cups of rolled oats, old-fashioned oats. I like Coach's oats, but all I have today is Quaker oats. Then we're going to take a half a cup of walnuts, a half a cup of slivered almonds, a third of a cup flaked coconut, and a quarter cup of sunflower seeds. We're going to mix those up. Of course, you could use pecans if you prefer. They're a little bit sweeter, but this will be a very sweet recipe anyway. Then I'm going to add about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon and a little touch of salt. We're going to mix a little salt and cinnamon together. About a teaspoon, I'd say. And add that to the mix. Now I am going to add half a cup of honey. You can also make this unsweetened. Then I'm going to add 1/2 cup of toasted sesame oil, but you could use olive oil or any other oil of your choice. Toasted sesame oil. Then mix that up really well. Really mix this up well with your fingers. It's just difficult to get the oats off your fingers once you're finished, but you do want to coat every bit of this. Back when I was in high school in the early 1970s, yes, that's how old I am, this was my favorite thing to eat for breakfast. Now we're going to put it on a parchment-covered cookie sheet and mush it down, and we're going to cook it at 350 for about 30 minutes, but you'll want to check the oven about every 8 to 10 minutes just to make sure it's not toasting too much on one side, and you can move it around a little bit so that everything gets cooked. I should say everything gets toasted. Ready to go in the oven, just like that. So here we have it after about 35 minutes. Nice and toasty, nice and crunchy. I added about a half a cup of cranberries after we took it out of the oven. And now this is ready to put away. It's all cooled off. It's ready to eat. You can use it as a breakfast cereal, which is what I use it for. And it could also be a trail mix or some kind of topping for your ice cream. It's just really good. A rainy day gives me a perfect opportunity to be inside the garden room, performing a task in gardening that I really rather enjoy, and that is planting my little seedlings into larger pots, the ones that I don't want to put directly in the garden right now. I've done quite a few videos on up-potting your little plants, and I guess the first question would be, why would you even want to up-pot your little plants when you could put them right into the garden? Yesterday I up-potted quite a few seedlings, so we will jump over to that video clip right now. What I'm doing today with some of these larger seedlings is I'm moving them to bigger pots. It's not time to put them in the garden yet in the area that I'm in, because I just don't know if it's going to get cold again. So they're running out of space, these particular plants, in these little bitty containers. So I'm going to up-pot them into bigger pots. In this case, I'm using these little cardboard type pots. These are great. You can plant these straight into the ground when you're ready. But this way you have more room for growth, get a stronger root. I'm going to pull them out when they're somewhat dry because they're easier to get out that way. And you notice how long and leggy this is. I'm going to sink it in pretty deep. And I'm going to bring the level of the soil up to about that far. And roots will develop from this stem underground, making this a stronger plant. Now these absorb the water, so they stay nice and moist as long as you can water them from below. And that's what you want to do. Keep them watered from beneath. Set them in a shallow dish. Little tin pie plates are perfect for this. Now when it gets a little bit tricky is when you are dealing with these itsy bitsy little things. And you could just take out every single one of these, save one, the most healthy one, if that's what you want to do. Or you can pull them apart, because this could plop right into your garden just like that. And I would do this with a lot of plants. But I overseeded these Canterbury bells because they were so tiny it was hard not to. That's the dog. He's keeping me company again in the garden room. But I want to save all these, so I'm just going to very delicately pull them apart a bit. As you can see, they're not as fragile as they look. Now, I did an entire video on this called Up Potting Your Seedlings in 2018, which gives you a lot more detail than I'm going to do today. But you can see that we have quite a few little possibilities here for plants. And I'm going to up pot them in these little clay pots here, simply by making a little hole and placing the little babies right in there. Once again, I'm going to give them a little extra soil on top. Now, instead of having 20 little plants in a pot, I'm only going to have 4 in a bigger pot. There we go. It's as easy as that. And then when you're ready to plant these in the garden, here they are. Another plant is lupins. Now this is a perennial lupin, and I've been growing it for quite a long time, and it's a really slow grower. But this was growing in a pot with several others, and I just up-potted it into one of these paper cardboard biodegradable things, because I like these. You can pop them right into the ground when you're ready. But I really want to get this lupin to grow nice and healthy for me before I put it in place in the garden. So there's another reason. These were also up-potted. They were dianthus. They're looking really good. There are 4 in a pot. But these I could put directly in the garden right now. They look like they're pretty healthy. But we still have till the 22nd of April before our last frost day. Of course, dianthus likes the cold weather, and you don't really have to worry about that. Hawks also do strange things for me in the garden. It seems like if I put them in any smaller than this into the garden, they just disappear. The bugs eat them. I don't know what happens to them. So I want them to get to a much nicer size than this, but I want to show you. These hollyhocks were planted in trays, but I want to show you the hollyhocks that I planted in the mini greenhouses. Look at these. These were planted at the same time, and they're wonderful. Look how healthy they are. I love these mini greenhouses. This is my future here. No more trays for me. Well, that's probably not true. I'll probably continue to use trays when I have to. But I want to show you something else. This is blue sage. This is a perennial, something I really, really want. As you can see, once again, I pretty much overseeded, but I'm trying to limit these little ones to about 2 sages per compartment. So I have thinned them out. I don't really like to do that. I like to save everybody, but sometimes you just don't have time. Now, I want you to take a look at my blue sage that I planted in the mini greenhouses. Can you believe it? Look at this. This was planted about 1 week before I planted in these trays. These trays I had upstairs in a very small compact greenhouse that is right in front of our window. It gets a lot of warmth, it gets a lot of everything that it needs, humidity, everything. But look at the difference in size. It's just shocking. This just makes me happy. I mean, they're really packed in here, not quite as tightly as the others, but they could be pricked out right now. And I could put these in larger pots, just in case I don't know where to put them in the garden because I have so many. I want to spread them around quite a bit. I think I will, just for the sake of demonstration, prick a couple of these out, up pot them, just so you can see how you would do this if you used a mini greenhouse. Now, remember this. This mini greenhouse was outside in all the weather. It was in the snow, it was in the freezing temperatures, it was in the rain. Never once did I have to water it or move it. It was just closed up with the drainage holes on the top and the drainage holes on the bottom. And it was sealed around the edges. And then I guess I opened these up to look at them about 3 weeks ago. And I mean, all of them that I did, with the exception of about 2 things, just have done phenomenally well. These little Hopalong Hollow mini greenhouses myself. If you go back and look at February 1st video, you will see how I made them. You just might want to try this next year. I'm going to start out with a little pre-moistened potting mix about halfway up in my little pot. And then it's called pricking out, and the reason is because what you do, if you can see this very closely, let me see if I can get right in here. I'm going to choose a couple of these, and I'll have to choose a couple because they're growing so closely together. And I'm going to sort of, you could use a pencil tip, but I'm going to use this little tool here. I'm just going to prick around the plant lightly, and then I'm going to try to lift it out. Looks like I'm going to get quite a few of them. Plop it in there and fill in with soil. Press firmly. A little more soil. Okay. Actually, I think I've got 2 here. Not 1, 2. That's okay. They can grow together. They can be best buddies. And I'm going to water them thoroughly. I can either put these in the cold frame or just leave them here in the garden room. Or I can even put them out on the porch because they are acclimated to the weather already. If you wanted to up pot this one that only has 2 plants in it, very easily you could just put the pellet in the larger pot and work around it. And that's what I'm going to do with this little hollyhock, because I like to keep the hollyhocks, as I said before, let them grow till they're at least 5 or 6 or 7 inches tall and then put them in the garden. So this one has plenty of room to grow. I will fill in the soil all around it, and I will just let it grow on the windowsill. There's just something so sweet and old-fashioned about plants growing on a windowsill. This also gives me a chance to talk about the roots and the tubers that came in the mail this week. Ordered way back, some of them in December and January, but they don't send them out until it's spring planting time. So I've got quite a few boxes here. Not a terrible lot of work, but I wanted to talk to you about roots and tubers because you can plant these directly in your garden. Okay, let's talk about roots. I'm going to start out with hollyhock roots. Now you already know that you can plant hollyhocks quite easily from seed, but if you really want a head start on your hollyhocks, you can also buy roots. And that way your hollyhock is sure to bloom the first year, because generally the roots are pretty nice. Look at that great root system. And it's so easy to do. You're just going to plant. If I was outside, I could actually go do it for you. You want to dig a nice big hole, and you want to spread your roots out in the ground, and then you want this bit right here just peeking right at the soil level, so that your little babies are coming out and reaching for the sun. And that's basically what you're going to do with every single thing that I show you. Have 4 nice, thick, healthy roots for only $10. Now, of course, you can do it from seed, but if you really want to guarantee that your hollyhocks will bloom this year instead of next year, go for roots this time. Next root that you absolutely want, especially in a cottage garden, because this is an old-fashioned cottage flower. This is a perennial. It will come back year after year. They grow to be about 36 inches tall. They come in pinks, purples, and whites. And this is a phlox, and you can see the roots here are just raring to go. Beautiful, beautiful roots. And if you gently pull them apart, you can see those gorgeous roots, and you can see all the new leaves and stems that are going to be emerging out of the earth. So the trick to this is you do not want to cover this part, but you definitely want to give a lot of nice room underground for your roots. I generally plant these horizontally rather than vertically. I've had a lot of success with phlox, but never from seed, only from roots. A stilbea is our next plant. This is also perennial. I don't really want to take it out of the bag right now, but you can see how it's already ready to go into the ground. You want to keep these in the bag until you're actually ready to put them in the earth. You don't want these to dry out. So this is 24 to 36 inches tall. It's a wonderful flower that also spreads out beautifully. Comes in shades of purple, pink, white, maroon. A very, very trustworthy plant, which will come back year after year for you. So here's another one that was great to grow from a root. This little plant is a blue sea holly. I planted these from seed this year. I've got the seeds coming up, but I want to try it with a root too. And just by close examination, I can see that this is the crown right here. And there is the little bitty stem starting to come out. So I'll have to look into how to plant this one, as I'm not familiar with it. And here we have a peony root. I think peonies are one of the most absolutely exquisite cottage flowers that you can put in your garden. It's also a perennial. It will do beautifully for you. Once it gets going, it will expand underground in order that you may be able to divide it up in a few years and make new plants. They bloom early spring, but they keep their foliage even after they bloom. So they're still a beautiful plant even without the flowers, but the flowers are sensational. So this is another root that you can plant with a great amount of success. Our last root is actually what's called a tuber, and it's a rather ugly looking little thing. And this is a dahlia. I am not a dahlia expert. I grew them for the first time last year. All I know is this. I didn't put them straight into the ground. I put them in pots until they began to develop the leaves and the stems. Now, this right here is obviously where it was cut off, the stem that it was cut off from last year. And you want that to be level with the earth or just below it. And here you can see what they call eyes. And this is where the plant will start growing. So just because last year was the first time I grew these, I decided to start them in pots. I'm going to do the same thing this year. And it's just a simple matter of putting your potting soil in a pretty large container, just enough so the guy can fit in there. Pre-moistened soil. And then I'm going to just cover it up with soil up to here, right about there. And I'm going to give it a water. I'm going to probably put these in the cold frame, and once they start sprouting and developing leaves at a good rate, then I will probably put them directly into the garden. But I am no dahlia expert, so if you want more information on dahlias, I'm sorry, I am not the person to give it to you. I will, however, show you the varieties that I bought. By the way, the reason these look so bad is because they're dormant. And we want to wake them up. So they've been sleeping all winter long. But it's going to be pretty amazing to see what kind of gorgeous flower grows out of this potato-like looking, kind of like monstrosity here. We'll see. I'm happy to say I've accomplished quite a bit today in this little garden room, and there's one more thing that I want to do, and I wanted you to do it with me. Last year, and in the last few videos, I have planted a lot of things that we are going to incorporate in a really special garden in the next video, and I want you to follow along with me. And one of the first things that I want you to do, I want you to get a hold of some Lunaria plants, also called money plants, also called honesty. And I want you to take them, and I want you to plant at least 10 in a little pot, because we're going to be using these in our next garden. It's going to be a garden, I think, you're going to want to follow along with. Have some germination on these money plant seeds within the next week or so, also known as honesty or Lunaria. And you can find these seeds at any good seed company online or even on eBay. And then, once they start growing, I'll tell you exactly what we're going to do with these. Well, I seem to be surrounded by little rabbits who tell me they've already eaten without me because I spent so much time in the garden room. But they're going to keep me company at the table anyway. Well, let me take this time to give you an update. I'm so sorry I was unable to do an Easter video. I had something really lovely planned. But as I mentioned in my community post, we had really bad weather here, and it caused some terrible tree damage across the road, which knocked out everybody's power and phone lines. However, it gave James an opportunity when the phone lines went down and the power lines went down to knock out some trees that were really hazardous on our property. So we had 4 fallen trees on our property and 4 fallen trees across the road that had to be taken care of, and that pretty much took care of any plans that I had, because we have had a lot of cleanup to do. Nevertheless, I really had to finish my little rabbit family here, of whom I am very, very pleased. I think every one of them has a distinct personality, and I'm in love with all of them. Let me tell you a little bit about my little ladies and gentlemen here. Now on this one I was happy to be able to use the wool that I dyed over the autumn last year. I dyed that wool with the walnuts, and it turned out to be beautiful on this wonderful little hair. And each one of these, I think you realize, is needle felted. meticulously needle felted by hand. So despite the fact that it looks like they don't take very long when I'm doing a video, they are very time consuming. Each little outfit is either handmade by me or it's refashioned from all vintage fabric and vintage doll clothes. So each little outfit is pretty special and unique, and each little rabbit is special and unique. Because the rabbits are always a different size, I have to tailor each outfit to fit the rabbit's body. Just like a person, every one of them, even though I start out with the same wire frame, I always end up with a different size body. And each face is always unique and different looking. And that's what makes them special, I think. The little bonnet on the chocolate brown bunny there, her name is Valentine, by the way, that was wool that I dyed with the pokeberries last year. That turned out to be a gorgeous color as well. This little rusty colored chap on the end is a special order for some people who I think are going to be very happy to meet him. Before I fill my bowl with my nighttime granola, let me show you this dinnerware that I found at the antique store / thrift store. I remember this dishware from the 80s, and I remember really wanting this, but not being able to afford it. But this time it was a bargain. I got a 20-piece set for $30, and it's called Sandstone Country Cottage Dinnerware, and I think it's just very sweet, simple, and charming, kind of like a little sewn sampler is what it reminds me of. It's very Hopalong Hollow-ish. So that's the bargain of the week, I'd say. I'm just going to have a cup of sleepy time herbal tea because it's late, and a bowl of granola for dinner because you can have it for dinner as well as having it for breakfast. We were all fortunate that nobody was harmed when the trees fell, including all the animals who are all safe and sound. I know many of you have asked about them, and all is well. So listen, from Hopalong Hollow, this is Jerry, and I'll see you sooner rather than later this time when we plant a really special garden. Bye.